Hi there, my name is Clayton. I'm from Little Pig Consulting, and I'm currently a business coach and mentor here in Toowoomba. I've been mentoring businesses in our region for around 5 or 6 years now, and I've been in management positions for probably around 25 to 30 years. So been in lots of situations where I've either been mentored or I've actually had to mentor somebody else. So what does it mean to actually be a mentor? Well, sometimes you're dealing with different personalities in the workplace, and oftentimes they could be dealing with personal issues outside of the workplace that can impact their ability to do their job. So as a mentor, you've got to take some of these things into consideration. So being a mentor, it's not just looking at their work performance, but it's also taking into account what's going on sometimes at home. This is a big responsibility, and you may even feel at times that you're not worthy. And this is probably one of the first points we'll cover off. Sometimes we feel like, well, what have I got to offer as a mentor? And you may not have had any particularly formal training in being a mentor or a coach, or even a manager for that fact, but you've just landed in this position. So no doubt over your career, you've either been in situations where you've been on the receiving end of a mentor or a manager, or you've actually been on the other side where you've been a manager for a little while as well, and maybe even some of that mentoring stuff has come into it. So feeling like you're not worthy is a quite common thing to feel. In fact, everybody feels a little bit of that, I'm sure, most days of the week. I know I do. So being a mentor and feeling comfortable in your own skin is important. Understanding that you've been there and done that, and sometimes it's not until someone actually stops you and reminds you of the experiences that you personally have been through that you actually realise that you do have the skills to be a mentor. So today what we're going to do is run through a few basic skills that you can use as a mentor in the workplace so you can effectively help your fellow employees. So let's pause now and go to the workbook. So the first point we're going to talk about today is the environment. And I'm not talking about how green the grass is. I'm actually talking about the workplace environment. So if you are going to have a conversation or a mentoring session with somebody, make sure you take them to a place where they feel comfortable. So a couple of things not to do might be, to sit down right next to them at the desk where everybody else can hear them and it's in an open environment. That would be something that you probably wouldn't want to do. So maybe look, if you've got a tea room or if you do have a meeting room, maybe you could take them to the meeting room or that spot that's particular and have this chat with them. Depending on the conversation that you're about to have, sometimes it's actually lawful that you give them some notice that you're going to have a conversation with them, particularly if it's around their performance and if the conversation is going to result in a written warning. So it's very important that you let them know a day or so before that you're going to have a performance conversation, so then they can bring along somebody, if they wish, as a support person. And this support person is there just to basically hold their hand in effect, not to actually say or get involved in the conversation. So have a think about the type of conversation you're going to have. Is it a serious conversation? Is it one that's going to result in some sort of a warning? Or is it just a general catch-up? Either way, think about the environment in which you're going to have the conversation and where that conversation can take place. Think about where you'd be most comfortable if this was to happen to you. Where would you like to sit? How would you like to be placed in the room? And is the door open or closed? So really think about the environment and making sure that your mentee is feeling really comfortable. So the next point we're going to cover off is body language. Body language is really important when you're in a mentor or a mentee situation, or if you're in a management role as well. When I mean body language, looking at how the mentee or the person you're speaking with is actually sitting in the chair or standing, looking at their arms, where they're placed, their posture can be another cue. Folding of their arms can often mean that they're disinterested, but don't confuse crossed arms. Sometimes crossed arms can actually just be a comfort thing where they're just literally, it's comfortable for them to rest their folded arms on their belly. So body language, have a look at how they're sitting, have a look at their facial expressions. These are all physical cues to tell you whether your mentee is being comfortable with you or not. So one technique that we can look at is, they call it mirroring the body language. So mirroring a little bit about how they're sitting, how they're postured, possibly even how they're holding their arms, or crossing their legs or where they're facing. If they're leaning in a little bit, you can lean in just a little bit. But with the technique, be very careful not to make it obvious. I don't know whether you've been in a situation where you can tell that someone is mirroring your behaviour. It's quite off-putting. So if you are going to use this mirroring technique, do it really subtly, and you may delay it from reacting to their body language before you reflect that body language back. So the whole idea of body language, particularly in a conversation, is to make sure that they feel comfortable. That's the main part, is so that they feel comfortable enough to open up to you, and you'll be able to tell whether you're on the right track or not simply by looking at how they're sitting and how they're postured. It's really important. The next item we're going to talk about is self-confidence. And sometimes you might feel a little bit inadequate, whether you've got the skills or the knowledge to actually mentor somebody else. Sometimes we all feel a little bit of lack of confidence generally, whether it be, in our role or in life in general. But I'd actually like to get you to stop and think about some of the roles and responsibilities that you've had in the past. Most of us have either been on the receiving end of a management situation and had those conversations had with us, or you've actually been in situations where you have managed other people and you have had some of those conversations. And I think sometimes we forget the knowledge that we've actually got. It's not until someone stops you and says, "Hey, have you been in this situation before?" And you go, "Actually, I have." So I suppose take confidence in yourself. If you've been placed in a mentor role, someone has seen something in you, possibly that you haven't even seen in yourself. So take confidence, you got this. Now the next subject we're going to talk about is how to have a difficult conversation. What do I mean by difficult conversation? Well, it could be a conversation around their performance, or it could be around an issue that's happened within the workplace. That's what I'd call a difficult conversation. Well, sometimes these conversations are quite uncomfortable for us as the mentor or as a manager to actually perform that conversation with somebody. But rest assured, if you're feeling uncomfortable about the conversation, I bet you the person you're talking to is also feeling a little uncomfortable. So how can we make this situation better? What I've done in the past is actually make some notes of what I'm going to say. And I actually ask the person that I'm talking to, is it okay if I refer to a few notes? So again, I'm trying to make them feel comfortable, but at the same time, trying to make me feel comfortable too about having that difficult conversation. So having some clear notes, particularly if it's a performance situation and there's KPIs involved, keeping those points very clear. The other technique when you are having a difficult conversation is to take the attention off the person and focus on their behavior or their performance. So watch the type of language that you're using. So you wouldn't say, "Look, I really don't like what you've done. This behavior is terrible. Watch your language." What you might do in another way is saying, "Look, recently we saw and observed some behaviors that didn't quite line up to our values. Can you give me a little bit of information and help me understand what happened there?" Notice the difference in the positive language. Wherever you can, use positive language with the person, which will help getting through that difficult conversation. Have some clear notes, take some deep breaths, and watch how you look as well. I think that's important too. If, where you need to be serious, but don't be deadly serious and make them feel uncomfortable that way. So I think the way that you look and your body language, the way you're holding yourself, will help towards those difficult conversations. Be okay to stop and pause through these difficult conversations and gauge the response that you're having from the mentee. And if you need to, take a break. Make sure there's water, make sure that you're feeling comfortable, both of you, throughout that conversation period. Next, we're going to talk about leading questions. Asking leading questions is really important. And what do I mean by a leading question? Well, I'll tell you what isn't a leading question, is a question that has an answer that is just a single word. So either resulting in a yes or a no. A leading question could be, "Tell me why this or that." So a leading question will help you draw out the person that you're speaking to. One technique that I like to use is called the 5 whys, which will help you in questioning and talking and asking these questions of your mentee. The 5 whys is a technique where you ask why at least 4 or 5 times. So as an example, the 5 whys is a great technique. Let's say one of your employees is coming to work looking pretty tired, and as a result, their performance is not as good as you'd expect. So using the 5 why technique, you could ask the question, why, up to 5 times. So you'd sit down, we're in a couple situation, and you'd ask, so why are you feeling so tired? You look a little tired today. Is everything okay? And they say, yeah, I was up last night really late. Oh, okay. Was there a reason, or why were you up so late? Oh, because I was gaming all night. Oh, okay. So why don't you sort of go to bed a little earlier and make sure that you get a bit better sleep if it's impacting on your work? It seems like you're staying up late. Is this something that happens a lot? So asking why a few times more, and look, it might get back to the reason they're staying up late. Playing video games is because they find it hard to unwind and relax, so they try and take their mind off by playing video games. As an example, asking why 5 times to get to the root cause, and the root cause with your employee might surprise you. So using some open-ended questions, using some techniques like the 5 whys may help in drawing out that person and getting to the root cause or to the bottom of what's really going on. The next point we'll talk about is following up. This is something that sometimes I struggle with. Following up after a conversation that you've had, whether it be a performance conversation or just a general mentoring session, is really important. So what I like to do is take some notes during the mentoring session. So then as we discuss some issues or we discuss some points, I've actually got some things written down to remind the mentee what we've discussed. And what I generally like to do is do a follow-up email and as discussed. So I'll actually put in that email, thanks for chatting with me today, had a great conversation. Here are the main points that I got out of today, and these are the points that I'll be following up with you next time we meet. So taking good notes, telling the mentee when you're going to follow up, and let them know that you are going to send them an email with the points that you've discussed is really important. So depending on how you like to take your notes, it might be in a notebook or an electronic form or in your diary, whatever it is, make some clear notes, and so you've got those points to follow up with. Nothing worse than getting into a mentor session and then forgetting what you spoke about last time. Not good for you, not good for the mentee. So follow up is key. The next topic that we're going to talk about is setting boundaries. Setting boundaries is really important. And what I mean by that is letting the mentee know when you're available and when you're not. Literally when they can call you, when they can text you, and when it's not okay for them to do so. Typically, we work the hours that we work, and a shift might be at 8:30 till 5 o'clock. So it's very important to set those boundaries. If they're the times that you're on the job and that you're available to chat, then enforce those boundaries. If someone does call you or text you, let it go to voicemail. Let it be dealt with during the normal business hours that you're normally available. Don't set the precedence of answering those calls, replying to a text after hours or outside those times that you've specified that you're not available. This is really crucial. Setting boundaries so that it's really clear when you're available and when you're not. The next point we're going to talk about is confidentiality. This is also, just like the other points, critical in a mentor and mentee relationship. What do I mean by confidentiality? That is where they tell you something that might be private, that is not for the general people around to know about. As an example, they may be having some struggles at home, or they may have an addiction problem or an alcohol or drug issue or something like that that could be affecting their work. So confidentiality around what they say is really important. If you are taking any notes, make sure that those notes are kept private, that they're locked or secured away where nobody can see them. Confidentiality in the workplace, in a management role or a mentee-mentor role, is crucial. But what happens if they tell you something that's a little on the blurry side as far as the law is concerned? I'm not going to give you advice today on what to do there, except talk to somebody else about that. If they come to you with a situation that is bordering on illegal or behaviours that are, outside of our laws here in Australia, seek some advice. Don't handle that on yourself. Talk to a manager above you or a colleague around what to do and how to deal with that situation. So the next part we're going to talk about is setting goals. This is crucial in a mentor-mentee relationship. Setting goals is important. Some of the goals that you might want to set maybe on a business front or even on a personal front. On a personal front, you may be wanting them to maybe involve themselves more in the community, as an example. This may not be directly related to the business, but certainly is a crucial part of them being part of the community and moving forward in the business. So setting goals is really important, and we can use the SMART acronym. And the SMART acronym is S equals specific, M is for measurable, A is for attainable, and R is for realistic, and T is timely. So using the SMART technique. So the bottom line is make sure the goals aren't too far for them to reach. Make sure that there's a time limit on them, that they've got something and a bit of a deadline to work to. So remember the SMART technique when you're setting goals. Being a mentor is really important, and it can be a lot of fun. I hope you've got some good points out of what we've talked about today, both through the video and your workbook. Enjoy mentoring. The whole point of mentoring, though, is also about what you can take away from the mentee. I learned so much from the mentee back to me. It's amazing. So have a really open mindset and be open to learning and enjoying the whole process that mentoring can have. Remember, be confident, make plenty of notes, remain confidential, set some really good goals, and I'm sure you'll do really well. All the best.